Hey, it would be really cool if you read this. Thank you. Like talking to you.
Nickel Plate Road 587 is an H60 Class 282 Mikado type steam locomotive built in September 1918 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works for the Lake Erie and Western Railroad as number 5541. In 1923, the LE&W was merged into the New York, Chicago, and St. Louis Railroad, commonly referred to as the Nickel Plate Road, and was assigned 587 as its new number in 1924. Its cylinders were replaced with Lima Locomotive Works castings during its late 1943 overhaul. 587 served on the Nickel Plate Railroad for 37 years on the route from Indianapolis to Michigan City. One of 587's grandest moments in revenue service was pulling a campaign train for then vice presidential candidate Richard Nixon. 587 pulled the candidate and future president from Lafayette to Frankfort, Indiana, on October 14, 1952. After its final run in 1953, the locomotive retained relatively unchanged from its original design. In March 1955, it was officially retired. In 1955, another Mikado, numbered 639, was shopped with a 22RA tender on which the stoker was inoperable, and the railroad switched the tenders to keep 639 running. On September 9, 1955, Nickel Plate Road 587 was donated to the city of Indianapolis and put on display in Broad Ripple Park in Indianapolis, Indiana. 639 was retired in 1957 and put on display in Bloomington, Illinois, where it remains on display today with 587's original 16RA tender. 587 remained in Broad Ripple Park until October 1983, when the city of Indianapolis was interested in building a new public library in the park, but the only available location was where the 587 was displayed. A group of people called Friends of the 587 did a feasibility study and determined that the locomotive was a good project for restoration. The locomotive was then leased by the Indianapolis Parks Department to the Indiana Transportation Museum. From October of 1983 to September of 1988, the Indiana Transportation Museum leased a work area at Amtrak's Beech Grove, Indiana shops. During restoration, the museum was surprised to find that when the welds holding the firebox doors closed for safety purposes were removed, there were still ashes in the ash pan. This indicated that the locomotive was simply pulled from active service and stored until being donated to the city of Indianapolis. Restoration consumed many thousands of volunteer hours and nearly $250,000 in donated money and materials. After a 5-year restoration, 587 returned to active service on September 17, 1988, by pulling an excursion train from Indianapolis to Logansport, Indiana. 587 was operated by the Indiana Transportation Museum and was considered its crown jewel. It was used primarily to pull the museum's fair train from Fishers, Indiana to the Indiana State Fair in Indianapolis, Indiana, and other special events. In 1989, 587 teamed up with Norfolk and Western J-Class 484-611 to pull the annual Independence Limited from Rocky River, Ohio to Roanoke, Virginia, over a 4-day period from June 17th to 20th, with 587 being added at Bellevue, Ohio. On July 16th of 1989, 587 joined 611 and Norfolk and Western Class A 2664-1218 to lead a triple header from Roanoke to Lynchburg, Virginia, for the National Railway Historical Society convention held in Asheville, North Carolina. The 587 led 2 excursions for the convention, one of them with 1218. In October 1988, 89, and 93, 587 made runs down to Bloomington, Indiana, along with a side trip over Tulip Trestle, 20 miles west of Bloomington. In 1993, 587 led with Nickel Plate Road 284 Berkshire 765 on an excursion between Fort Wayne Indiana, and Chicago, Illinois, as well as another doubleheader with 765 as part of the National Railway Historical Society convention. This was the first time two Nickel Plate Road steam locomotives doubleheaded since the steam era. In 1997, with the engine needing repairs, 587, along with a tool car in tow, deadheaded to the Monticello Railway Museum in Monticello, Illinois, to receive necessary repairs. With the repair work to the wheels completed, 587 made a few runs to benefit the restoration of Southern Railway 280-401. In 2000, 587 was selected as the starring locomotive to appear in the children's movie Old 587, The Great Train Robbery. In the film, a group of kids find the locomotive in a scrapyard. With the help of the locomotive's old engineer, they rescue the 587 from being cut up for scrap and then donate her to a museum. On November 11, 2002, with 587's Federal Railroad Administration mandated rebuild approaching in a few months, 587 made its final runs at the Indiana Transportation Museum, an all-day excursion over the museum's entire 38-mile line from Timpton to Indianapolis, Indiana. In early 2003, 587's operating permit expired. This is due to the Federal Railroad Administration's requirements to have all of the boiler tubes and flues from the steam locomotive to be replaced every 15 years. In 2008, the ownership of 587 was officially transferred from the Indianapolis Parks Department to the Indiana Transportation Museum. Restoration work on 587 slowly but surely progressed. Sadly, on June 28, 2018, a court order required the Indiana Transportation Museum to vacate its former location at Forest Park in Noblesville, Indiana, and any equipment left behind would be raided by the police and cut up for scrap. For the first time since 1953, 587's future looked very uncertain. Thankfully, the Kentucky Steam Heritage Corporation in Ravenna, Kentucky, made a deal with the museum to relocate 587 before the deadline. On July 7th, most of the main components of 587 left the museum's grounds, except for the tender body, which left the grounds on July 12th and was fully unloaded on July 14th. On March 5th, 2021, the ownership of 587 was transferred from the Indiana Transportation Museum to an anonymous private individual who is working with the Kentucky Steam Heritage Corporation regarding the future of the locomotive. 587 will be remaining in Ravenna until a solid plan can be formed and funding can be raised.